Hello, good morning. Uh, I'm Ted. I'm going to be working on a my game, which is a roguelike deck builder where you play as a guy who is literally building a patio deck. Let's get to it. I'll show you kind of where what it is. Actually, I can't really show you what it is today because I'm in the middle of making it support a really important feature, which is the ability to select new cards. So, um, what is the game? You play a as somebody who actually no, you know what? I can show you because what all I have to do is just change the mode, and then I'll rebuild it. So I have a card select screen that I'm working on right now, but it's not really important to. This is the game. So you play as this guy who wants to build his deck, this patio deck, and you use cards from a deck of cards to build that deck. We have a number of different things that you can put on the deck, so I can build the deck using a post hole, and I can use joists to connect the post holes up and to expand the deck, basically to build additional paneling out. And I can also put these defensive structures down. So that's a turret, but that's actually a special kind of turret that has an increased amount of firepower depending on the size of the panel that it's sitting on. So if it's sitting, this is what I call a 1x1 panel. It's a small panel, but you'll see I'm actually building like a 2x2 over here. And so this same turret, when placed on this panel, would have an increased firepower. So the game has two phases. There's a deck building phase, which is where we are right now. We're in the deck building phase. And then when you finish your deck building phase, you then go into the deck defense phase. So now we're going to end our turn, and now we've got to defend this deck from, maybe angry neighbors or bureaucrats or whoever it is that doesn't want us to be building this deck. Maybe it's like building inspectors, you name it. They don't want you building the deck. So I can shoot these guys, and also I have my towers that shoot for me, and I have this kind of iterative thing where on every turn I get an opportunity to build my deck. So maybe what I do is I wait to place this second turret down, or maybe I put it down there. But I'm constantly kind of like thinking about planning where I want to place my post holes, where I want to place my boards, and then various enemies come and they attack me. So I'm currently prototyping the game, I'm just trying to get it to a point where the gameplay is kind of fun and it works, and it mostly gets to the core concept. It's starting to get to the core concept, which is to say that the deck building, this patio deck building, or this card deck, the cards that you choose to go in this card deck will affect this deck, and vice versa. So I'm trying to make it so there's synergies between the two decks. So that's kind of like the main goal here. I'm trying to prove that the game's hook can work. So the hook is kind of a joke because it's a roguelike deck builder about literally building a patio deck, which is kind of ridiculous. But it so you see there, I just put a panel down and I increased the size of my walking space. So I have a bigger deck that I can defend, and more of these turrets that I can put down. But the more that the patio deck building depends on the card deck building, the more that it really kind of hits on the core joke or the hook, which is this idea that it's a roguelike deck builder about literally building a patio deck. So the more that the game itself is a roguelike deck builder, not just in name, but in terms of the actual like rules and mechanics that are in the game, then the more it hits on the joke. So that's my thinking about it. One thing just to show you really quickly, this so this is just to kind of get at that idea. It's not as well communicated as it could be, but this turret right here, its firepower actually depends on the size of this deck panel that it's sitting on. So this is a larger deck panel, right? If I go into like my deck substructure view mode, then I can see that this is a larger panel, right? So what I should see is that this one has a faster fire rate than this one because it's sitting on a bigger panel. So how you build this deck here affects this turret, which is the goal. So I want the player to be making some strategic decisions about where they place these turrets, right? So you should see that the ones on the left have a faster fire rate. Now, it's probably too fast. It's probably like super unbalanced. But kind of the point is that, you imagine that I build a panel all the way out here, right? Some huge deck panel, right? And then I start putting these turrets on there. They're going to have every single one of them is going to have an absurd fire rate. And that's kind of the fun, I think, is in breaking games like this, in sort of like taking it to this kind of absurd conclusion. People like that kind of thing. People really like games that do that kind of thing. So that's games where like somebody comes in, they try and break it. I think there's a lot of fun to be had in that. I, of course, will try and engineer it so it can't be broken, but people trying to break it, that's like a fun way to play it. So that's kind of the core idea, and I only really have one element in the game that hits on that core hook or that core game concept, which is these towers that have a faster fire rate that depends on the size of the deck panel that they're sitting on. But there's going to be a lot of these kinds of things in the game. So you're going to be able to kind of pick and choose and mix and match which of those things go into your card deck. And then that's going to inform your strategy for building this deck. And then there's going to be a lot of different enemy types that come in. Right now I've got guys that they attack the post holes here, but there's going to be other guys. There's going to be guys that like, maybe they shoot projectiles at you, they throw knives at you. Maybe there's guys that jump up and crawl around on the deck. There's going to be a lot of different enemies, and then a lot of other ways to counter their strategy. So that's the game. Where I am right now is I've kind of punched to the core hook, right? So the core hook being there are these things that there are these elements that you place in the deck that depend on how you build the deck. But I have not yet. Right now there's no way for the player to actually build their card deck. So the player can build their patio deck, like that deck building is in place, right? I can grab one of these and I can build this patio deck, but I can't build this deck. So I don't have a way yet to choose new cards to go in this deck. Maybe there are other options like what's a similar game in the same genre would be Inscription, where you have the ability to destroy cards, like take cards out of your deck. I think that's also in Peglin. That's a game that also belongs to this genre. So you can take cards out of your deck, right? That's an option that might be in there. There might be an option to upgrade certain cards, right, or to like mix and match different properties of cards. That's in an Inscription. You can take certain cards and then you can kind of like smush them together. So that might be a thing that you can do. There's a number of different ways that I want it to make it so that the player can build this deck down here. But primarily, at the moment, the game is lacking just the basics, right? So I don't have a way to choose a card to put in this deck. So that's what I'm working on right now. Hey, how's it going? I remember you from YouTube. Sorry about that. I know that conversation about Zig that we got is pretty involved, but like honestly, like if it's a good tool, it's a good tool. I am just like not at a point where I feel like I can really switch out my tools right now, so it's I don't know. But when I'm more in a mode where I can, I think I will. So what am I doing now? There needs to be this ability to build the deck, the card deck, in order to really explore the rest of the concept of the game. There are other things that I think that this design needs. I think it needs a way of gating the playing of certain cards because they're so powerful. So like turrets right now, they're so powerful that I think you shouldn't just be able to play them every turn. So there needs to be a way to gate that. And I think one good solution to that problem is like some concept of resources that you have to collect. But that's all later. I want to like get in the ability to build the card deck. So that's kind of what I'm working on. I have just a flag that says like I'm currently in the card select screen because I'm just prototyping that screen. So all I've got right now is I was working on this just before. So it's just a really simple screen because again this is a gameplay prototype. I'm not really thinking in too much detail about how this is going to work, right? All that I'm thinking about is, gosh, like what, what's like, let's just get this basic thing in. So all I want to have is like the ability to draw the cards. I want you to be able to pick 3 cards. Again, I don't know why 3. It's an arbitrary choice. That's probably going to change. There's a bunch of stuff that's going to change after I play the game and work on it and add more depth to it. But just a simple screen where you can pick from 3 randomly chosen cards that are appropriate to where you are in the game. I think that's fine. So I've already got the text up here that's like choose a card. And then I'm drawing the card in the middle right here. And so all I need to do is draw a card here and a card there. And again, I'm just picking like template graphics. So there's not yet any logic about where they're or about how the cards are being like randomly selected. That comes later. I sort of have this preference for just getting things on the screen. I think that's so important that the first thing you do is just get some graphics on the screen and see it and then be able to work with it there. So rather conveniently, I already have a function that draws cards. And that all came from earlier when I was prototyping the other kind of deck building, the patio deck building side of the game. So as I was building that, I just needed a quick way to draw the cards. So I do have this function. So all I'm going to do is I've got the one for the center card. I just use the vector 2 as like its position. So it's in the center. So what I'll do then is I'll do like, left card, right card, and then right card. So, and then the left card is just going to be like, just copy this. Center card. So it's going to be the same as the center card, except I'm not even going to be all that sophisticated. Maybe what I want is like, it's going to start out at the width of the center card, right? Minus some amount of padding. Maybe it's something like, I don't know, 500 pixels or 300 pixels. It doesn't need to be, I mean, I guess I could divide the screen into thirds, I suppose. Then it would be like perfectly balanced. I guess I could do that. I don't know. Yeah, why not? So, or maybe that would be like fourths. Yeah, so like 1/4 of the distance. So something like quarter x. Just divided by 4. And then it would be a similar thing with like the 3/4 point. Um, although thirds technically is more. Actually, I don't want to use thirds. I don't want to use quarters. I want to use thirds. Because because of the rule of thirds from photography and from visual composition. That's why. Rule of thirds is if you put interesting subject matter in the third markers of any kind of photograph that you're taking, then it tends to be, it's not always the case that it's more visually interesting. There's a lot more to visual composition than just that rule, but it's like a handy guideline for newbies for how to set up photographs to be visually interesting, where you want to place your subject matter. But I guess artists also use it. So it's a handy rule. You put things in the third. So I'll actually just divide the screen by 3. And then the other one will be like the 2/3 point. So the center of this card will be in the 1/3 X position on the screen. And then the center of the right card will be on the 1/3 or the 2/3 X position on the screen. And then the Y is going to be a similar thing. So I'm actually going to pull up this. I'm going to pull up. Actually, what I will do is I will make just a V2 of like card width in pixel, card size in pixels. And so card size in pixels dot x, right, is just going to be this thing right here. And then I don't have to do this. And then card size in pixels dot y. There we go. And then I can just use that. So and then now I can start to put this together because I've got the third point and I've got the size of the card in terms of pixels. And so maybe this is kind of a good place to just like sort of quickly discuss for people that maybe aren't super used to like how I do things, or like maybe they haven't watched Handmade Hero or whatever. But if you come from like a website design background, this might seem kind of foreign to you because I am just doing the math to figure out where stuff goes. And that's actually surprisingly not common in software development anymore. It seems like so much of the way things are done now is like especially with cascading style sheets in HTML, it's like you're supposed to use these like nested container abstractions, and there's like, or at least I come from like an iOS development background, and so it's like, no man, you got to like set up the table view, and then you got to hook up the delegate and the data source and all this like complicated stuff to use this other object-oriented data structure to just lay out some stuff on the screen, right? So the way I do things, because I actually think it is simpler and it is more logical, I just do the math. I just say like, why not use 3 different languages to describe? Yeah, exactly. When when I am working with this stuff, I just do the math, and oftentimes what I find is the math turns out to be simpler and more reusable, because what I effectively have here is a truly cross-platform game engine, which is to say that when I run this, like I have a Macintosh sitting right next to me, and um, it's my iMac Retina display, whatever. The game runs on that, right? And so when I make a change to this code that you're looking at right here, that's the layout code for the cards in the game, or even in my other games, uh, what's great is like that thing works cross-platform, and that layout logic is only in one place, which is kind of the insanity of mobile app development right now, is this ridiculousness that I'm supposed to make an app for the iPhone, and I'm supposed to have like separate layout logic for that thing that's different from the layout logic on Android. And there are cross-platform solutions, but all of those are even more complicated than just using the object-oriented stuff that Apple or Google wants you to use. So if I do it with like React Native, then I've got to use their version of CSS, and then that's got that same kind of like weird container abstractions. And so I'm just like, no, like, F all of that. Let's just, and I feel like all of this is like just so that we don't do the math. Like, just because we don't want to like figure out that you have to divide the screen in thirds. And it's like, or divide it in half, or like, calculate the width of something and then and then put it there. It's like, okay, but actually that thing this like math thing that you think is so hard is actually less difficult and is more elegant and logical than the more complicated thing that you came up with. So that's why I'm just using good old-fashioned mathematics, ratios, to do what I'm doing. So now I've got the third X, right, for the left card, and then so left card min dot X is just going to be screen third dot X minus half times card size in pixels dot X, right? Oops. And then left card min dot Y is just going to be actually, no, I don't think the Y is not different on that, because the Y is just the center of the screen, and that doesn't vary across that row. So I think I just have to do that bit. And then I want to draw the left, so I'm just going to draw the left card. I'm just going to draw like the standard turret in the game. The game does have a standard turret. I'm not sure if I'm going to keep that or not, but I'll draw it on the left. And then I can just build this, and then I can just run it. Okay. So that works pretty simply as well. So now I'm drawing two cards. This is the left choice, and then the center choice, and then I'm gonna do the right choice, which is just going to be at the 2/3 point. So simple enough. Draw 3 cards. And again, I mean, like, I think a lot of people would say like, oh, this code is like super sloppy, but like, doesn't matter, because I don't even know if this is what I'm gonna use in the future. So we shall see. And then what I wanted to do is, R32 is screen 2/3 X, right? Which is going to be, the ratio is just 2/3, right? So 2 times 2.0F times the real viewport width over 3, right? And then that should give me 2/3 X, the 2/3 point on the screen. And then I just got to do the x coordinate. 2/3 x minus half of yeah. And so that's my right card choice, right? Then I can just say maybe one of the other cards will be it'll be something like I've got a number of so I don't really have many cards in the game yet. I do have a plan for a lot of the different cards that I want to put in the game. So let's choose a card text. Let's see. We'll just pick, you know what? I find that when I'm playing the game, I end up needing way more joists than I have. And it actually gets really annoying because I can put all these post holes down, but then I don't have joists to place between it. And so it just kind of sucks. So we're going to pick the joist card. Joists are so I think one thing I'm going to need to do as research for this game, I am going to have to accompany somebody who is literally building a deck, just so I can understand it from a bureaucratic standpoint, like what kind of process do people have to go through when they apply for all the permits to build a deck. But then also like practically like, okay, like putting the post holes in, putting the rim joists in, you know, paneling it over, all that stuff. I kind of want to understand that a little bit. I have watched a bunch of videos from the Home Depot on it. And that's given me a general sense of what deck building is. But I can't really say that I know too well how to build a deck. I just know how to build software. Okay, so now we've got the three different cards. We've got the turret. So this is a standard turret. This I'm calling it an A turret, which it's a turret where its firepower or its fire rate depends on the size of the deck panel that it's sitting on. And then a standard joist. And there's going to be a bunch of different kinds of joists and post holes in the game. There'll be some where you can place a bunch of them in a single use of the card. And I want to have like metal joists that conduct electricity, so you can like conduct an electric charge down the length of the deck. But yeah, so those three cards are there. What do we want to do? So at this point, it would be nice if the game had a way to show you which of the ones you're presently selecting. So just as a matter of kind of, I would call it like user interface concern, I like it when things show you that, like, have some kind of state change when they show you that they're selected. One really simple thing to do would be to just do the same thing that's done in the regular game. So I'll show you that, which is to make it so that the cards are like a little bit elevated. So I'll show you what that is. Okay. So in the actual game, when you pick a card, you notice, or when you like mouse over a card, right? It goes up just to indicate that that's the card that you selected. Now, in a shipping version of the game, that effect is going to be so much better, right? Like the cards are going to be maybe like a little bit 3D. They're going to be shimmery. They're going to have all these effects. It won't be like such a jarring transition. It'll actually be like animated. That's all polished, right? That's all stuff that one would do later. But just if you're making a simple prototype, it's nice to have really basic, uh, I would call them user interface affordances, or like things that make people feel like the thing is actually working, right? If you didn't have this kind of thing where the selected card looks like it's selected in some way, whatever effect you want to apply, however simple, it just doesn't feel playable, right? It feels like almost frozen. So I like to put those things in, even though some people might consider that polish. I consider a lot of those like user interface things to be necessary. So I'm going to do that, that effect. Because what we're really talking about is like, what I want at the end of this prototyping phase is to have something where people say, yeah, it's playable. I enjoyed the gameplay. Maybe I didn't, maybe they give me this laundry list of like, you could have polished that, you could have polished that, you could have polished that, you could have polished that. But it's like, okay, well, great. I mean, the fact is that you were interested enough to play the game to even tell me what to polish. So sweet, I'll just go polish that. So I just think it's kind of there's a weird kind of balance that you have to strike when you're doing an initial prototype. You have to do some of that stuff, but not too much of it. So how do we figure out which card is hovered, right? That's a good question. What I have at the moment is a state variable. So I think it's like hovered card. Card is hovered. I don't want hovered card index. Although that's actually not a terrible idea. So I already used this. And I could just have an array of 3. Sure, I will use this, but then I also need to remind myself to reset these state variables before, like when exiting that screen, because they will be used for another. They're also used in the game itself. So I guess I don't love like dual using state variables, but that's okay, I think, because the card selection. What I'm trying to do is have the card selection screen be like completely separate. It's a totally separate screen, right? We're not running gameplay. We're not running. We're not drawing any of the other stuff in the background. It really is just a separate screen that you go to. So that's all I want it to be. But I do like the idea of getting the hovered card index. And actually, I do have. So this is in my render loop logic. So I'm just going to put these, I'm just going to put this there, and then I'm going to come back to it. Show which card. Another reason that you want to put in these user interface quote unquote affordances, it's just because like if the game knows, if when you're testing it, right, if the game is giving you some visual feedback about what thing is selected, then you know that it's working. I know that sounds like really like silly and obvious, but you don't want to be going into the debugger to be like, am I hovering over that card or not? I think that's just kind of, that would be silly. So it's nice when you're using it and you're just like, oh, I hovered over the card, and now the game is telling me, it's giving me visual feedback that that's the card that I've indicated that I want to choose, right? Then when you later put in the other logic that's like, this is what we do after we have chosen a card, testing that part becomes a lot easier, because you already have this, you already know that the game can figure out which card you're hovering. So that's another reason why the first things that I do when I make software, I get some crap on the screen, and then I start to like integrate that with act like I start to have some of the actual interactions in place. So come back to this, show the hovered card slightly elevated. So we'll do that. I already have logic that does this. And the way that it, okay, this is, where is this logic? Card is hovered. Right. So this is the logic that I'm using to figure out which of the cards are hovered in the actual, in the game part of it, the deck building part. All it does is it goes over the hand, or it simulates which rectangles are going to be drawn on the screen that represent the cards that are in your hand. And then it figures out if your mouse position is inside of the bounding rectangles of one of those cards. And if it is, then it says, here's the card index that your mouse cursor is inside of. Very simple logic. So that's what I'm going to do. And we already have a lot of this stuff. We already have the actual rectangle for the cards for every single one of those because we just had to calculate those in order to draw them. So I'm gonna nab this. The thing though is that I can't do that in the rendering loop. I need to do that in the update loop. And there's some reasons for that I could kind of go into, but and perhaps people on stream have some better options for me, but I had to split my game's update and render functions because I was finding it difficult to control the frame rate on Windows, or I was finding it very difficult to find some function that detects what frame rate we're running at and then be able to make some decisions. I could not find a reliable way on Windows to detect what frame rate we're running at. So the alternate solution to that was to just cap it at, choose my own frame rate. I chose 60 frames, and I just cap it at that. And I recognize that, there's someone out there that's figured out the solution to this problem, but I just didn't have time to figure it out, or I didn't want to solve it for the last game that I was making, so I decided to split the update and the render functions. That was my solution, and then just cap it at 60. So that's basically what I'm doing, for better or worse. I recognize that it's not ideal, but it's kind of one of those trade-offs that you have to make. A, when you're prototyping something, but B, when you just want to get a product out. And actually now, if I look back at it, my last game, Moose Solutions, I've made some money on Steam, but more of my money is coming from Apple, of all things, which is weird. So I guess it didn't matter too much to have a Windows version. I'm surprised. So this is the card select screen, right? And I'm not using this point is inside rectangle thing yet, but I will use it. So I'll just comment that out. And then I just need to, so I actually need to store the rectangles I need to calculate and then store. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move the logic to calculate the draw rectangles for for the cards up to the update function. And then I'm just going to use them in the rendering function. So that's the plan. Let's see. Then I'm just going to have the 3 different rectangles in an array. I'm trying to find, where is my card select screen? Okay. Starting deck, patio deck. Card choice rectangles. And it's 3 of them. Okay. So I'll come back. I'm basically just going to go back to my logic where I figure out what those rectangles are that I'm going to draw. And then I'm going to move them. So that's kind of the plan here. Because all I want to do is since I'm going to kind of pre-calculate the rectangles, then store them, and then use them later in the rendering function, I just want to test that the pre-calculated rectangles are right. That that if I use those, it's correct. So I would do that first. So this is all of that stuff, right? So this is all the text stuff. So it's drawing the first, the like choose a card text. That's what that is. And then I draw the mouse cursor. And now here is all the stuff where I figure out the rectangles. So I'm going to copy it, knowing that I'm not going to use most of it. But this will actually help. Let's see. So real viewport width is actually a different thing. Oh, I can just use screen.viewport size.x. Perfect. And yeah, I mean, a lot of this stuff looks kind of like, my gosh, he's just copying and pasting the same. But what you'll realize is it's usually like, okay, so now I'm going to get rid of this, right? This function, right? So we're not going to use this. Then I need to have like v2 center card max, right? Actually, do I have? Yeah, I think what I can do is I can just use vector2 addition to come up with the maximum, the maximum point. So basically, everything that's drawn in the game is just a rectangle with a vector2 that's at its minimum and its maximum. So minimum point plus some distance, maximum point. Maybe what I could do is like invert the camera, because what I feel is like what's actually showing on the screen. If I invert the X direction of my camera, then like the way that I use my hands would be the same or whatever. That might work. Anyway, there's a minimum point and a maximum point, and it just draws rectangles. And so the maximum is just the minimum point plus some size represented as a vector2, right? Which is just 2 floating point numbers. So it would be center card min plus card size in pixels, right? And then what I can do is I can say, game state, card choice rectangles in the first index, because it's just an array with 3 indices in it. So the 0th will be the left, the first index will be the center, and then then the rightmost will be the last index in the array. So I'm just kind of filling this in, and then I need to make a rectangle. Center card rect. And I can clean all this stuff up later. I don't really care at the moment because, I probably don't need to create like a separate V2, put it on the stack or whatever, and all this other stuff. Probably, yeah. So one thing I can see that I could do right now, just to kind of make this like, not where I don't have so many variables, is just this, right? So now that thing is going to be the center card rectangle. So that's the first one. And we already have the logic to draw the left card, right? So now we just need the left card, rectangle 2, left card rect. And then its minimum point is this thing right here. And then, not dot min. And then dot max is just the min plus some size. Yeah, this has kind of been interesting. Like, I don't like streaming like this because I don't know what people want out of a game development stream. What I feel like is lacking in game development streams is an emphasis on game design. I think there's a lot of like game programming type stuff, but I don't see a heck of a lot of like, here's how you would prototype a new game concept, like designing it while prototyping it. Like what I almost wanted to see, would love to see actually, what if you could go back in time and you could hang out with Jonathan Blow like while he was prototyping Braid? Like how cool would that have been? To see all of those kind of creative ideas happening and like coming together sort of day by day. And like, sure, what you see on the screen isn't super sophisticated, right? It's like not the best, it's not the best looking game, but you're starting to see those ideas coming together and you're starting to get a better sense of how the creative process works. That's what I want out of a stream like this, but I don't know if like the audience wants that, because there's a lot about that process that's, I don't know, it isn't necessarily educational all the time. Okay. So now, this is the left card rectangle, right? So we're gonna do that, and then we've got the right card one. Instead of drawing it, we're just gonna put it in the array of stuff. Okay. So the min there is just going to be right card min, because we already calculated that. And then the max is just the thing plus the size. Probably could make a function out of that or something, but I'm only doing this 3 times, so I guess I don't care that much. This goes in the second slot, and then it's like right card rect. Okay, so that's all three of those points. And then now we have to go back to where we're drawing these things. And instead of calculating it in the render function, we're going to calculate it in the, we're just going to use what we calculated in the update function. So do that. So all this goes away, or at least we commented out. Oh wait, what? No, that's not what I want. I want this. Here. Yes. Okay. Oh, and I want this too. I want to draw that monospace text or whatever. Okay. There I'm just going to use hard choice rectangles. Rectangle 2, center card rect. Real simple. Not, oh. I don't even need the whole rectangle for this, apparently. I just need the minimum. Because this render card function actually, I think it just calculates the size itself. So, that's cool. Get rid of that. This. Left card equals 0. Got min. Then we're not going to calculate the right card. Rect there. 2. All right. So that should not trying to do anything different, actually. That's the thing. We're just trying to do the same thing, but instead of calculating all the rectangles for where stuff goes, in the render function, we're going to do it in the update function, because then we can use the same rectangle that we calculated to display stuff as the rectangle that we will check when we're checking whether or not the mouse cursor is inside of the bounding box of that rectangle, right? And we got a bunch of stuff. Always with the compile errors. Okay, so real viewport width we don't, so yeah, that's right. So that's actually viewport size.x. Where does, okay. And that's probably somewhere else. Yeah. That's probably it for that one. And that one. 1683, huh? Well, that's because GameState has the S's uppercase. So that's why that's not working. And then it just needs to change here, there, and there. (201) viewport size undeclared. Okay, 201 is probably some function outside of. Oh, that's right. Screen.viewport size. That's those two. 1686. Card tiles. Oh, right, because I took it away. Okay. I know I use that later. Okay. So we need that. Kind of the again, not to like, one of the handy things about just, I guess like I'm kind of starting to get more firm on my belief that it's really useful to have text editing separate from any kind of like text processing. I think that's actually really important, and it's one of the things that really annoys me about a lot of like modern integrated developer and environments is I don't want it starting to predict all the text. I just want something that that is text editing strictly. And most of the time, I just want to stay in the same file. And I want to be able to find stuff in that file and jump around that file. I don't want to be jumping to a ton of different files. I find that to be very annoying and confusing. So I'm going to run that. All right, good. It doesn't look like anything changed, but that's actually the perfect result that we want because we're now using those pre-calculated rectangles to display or to draw these cards. So that's perfect. Now I could just kind of like clean up a bunch of stuff. Where did we do this thing? Oh, actually, I probably don't even need to clean up a bunch of stuff. All right. I'm actually just going to do a quick commit on this branch. Using pre-calculated card select rectangles. So that's that. I do use GitHub for now. I know a bunch of people have their objections to it, but I use it. It works for this stage of the product where it is presently, but it might not work later. Okay, so essentially, we've got these three rectangles now, and now we've got, so I guess this is like also kind of generic programming advice. Like a lot of times if you want to do something new, the best way to do the new thing is to get the project into a state where the new thing is now easy. And that's basically what we just did. So the thing we want to do is figure out what card you're hovering on with the mouse cursor. And the best way to do that is like get the rectangles that represent where the cards are going to be. So put the project into a state where you can easily do that. And then just run the check. So that's what we're going to do. All we got to do is just run the check. So we have this code to run the check. And the check is, the first check is going to be the center one. All right. The center card rectangle. And then we should have like some U32 hovered index 0. So now hovered index will be equal to whatever's in here. And so, I mean, I guess you could do this as you could just do it as a for loop. Because we hit the thing, yeah, actually that's better. Just do it as a for loop at the end. Simpler. Yep. Okay, so just do this as a for loop. What are we iterating? We're iterating over the card rectangles. Index is less than 3. Index plus equals 1. Okay. Right. No, rectangle 2, test rectangle. That ought to do it. Actually, now we just set game state variables. So game state, card is hovered, equals card is hovered. And then the hovered index is just going to be equal to hovered index. This hovered index only really, I know you can use 0. 0 doesn't completely mean null, which is a little bit annoying. But because then you have this extra variable. And that's which is kind of different from how my entity system works, where like 0 is null, and I love that actually because it simplifies things so much. I don't have to have like separate state or whatever, but still you have to like know that in advance before you work with it, so that's kind of annoying. But this should do it. So if the card is hovered, if any card is hovered, then I'm gonna draw that one. You know, I'm gonna draw the one that it represents, right? It also occurs to me that, well, this later. I think another simplification would be to just take the card drawing and just chuck that in a for loop, right? Because they're already calculating the rectangles. Yeah, there's no reason not to. Yeah. Again, so hopefully what I've shown you actually in this live stream is that I didn't start. You probably, if you were watching the whole time, you noticed that I did not start by saying, yeah, this is going to have a for loop and it's going to draw all three of them, and these are the abstractions that we're going to have. It was more like, let's do this. Oh, okay, here's a useful abstraction. Let's do that. Oh, okay, here's a useful abstraction. Oh, let's do this. So the for loop is kind of like the last thing that you do once you've recognized that that it has this kind of natural structure, that like the thing you want to do already has a structure that's this way. Then you do that. So now I'm gonna go and do that. Right? So, and instead of doing the test, I'm going to do the drawing, right? And then inside of that loop, I will say, hey, if the card is hovered and the card's index happens to be the same as this index, right? Then show it differently, right? Whatever way we want to show it differently, we'll show it differently. So that's what we're going to do. Draw the player's stats, deck defense. In card select. Okay. So this would be right before the sort and process render commands. And let's just call this card rect. Okay. And now see what we're gonna do is we're gonna not do any of this anymore here. And instead what we're gonna do is this. Here. So we're just gonna like draw that for loop. We have a working example to go through. So I'm going to need card tile size in pixels. That's something I'm using. And then another thing too is I'm gonna need references to all of the render cards that are in the game. So I need some card reference to show the 3 different cards. So this thing just needs a pointer to that. So I'm just going to have an array of pointers, which to some who are doing C programming might be scary, but it's actually not that scary. Trust me. An array of pointers. An array of pointers to this thing that's called a card render data, which is just like an abstraction that's just saying I'll call it card render datas. And there will be 3. The 0th position is going to be what? Turret card? Because that's on the left. All this is going to change, but I'm okay with that. The middle is going to be what? The area turret card. And then joist card. And then see what I can do is I can just go card render datas at index and do that part there. Actually, all I want to do now is just the for loop drawing part. So we're going to do that just to know that that part is fine. What do we have? Mouse pose undeclared 229. I think I can do input mouse pose. Error hovered index is not a member of game state. Really? Oh, hovered card index. Okay. Sounds good to me. Okay. That should be fine. 1723. Cannot convert card render data star to card render. Okay, so 1723. Oh, right. Because I dereferenced that. The stars. I dereferenced the array. The array is already itself a pointer. So if I want a pointer of the, how do I say this in a non-confusing? When I declare this thing, it is an array of pointers, okay, which is itself a pointer to the array of pointers, to a location in memory where the thing that's stored is pointers. So, or just memory addresses, right? Anyway, hopefully that's not too confusing. Hovered index is not a member of game state. Really? Okay. Hovered card. Didn't I do it already? 237. Oh, I didn't write it. Stupid. Okay. Hovered index is not a member of it. 237. What is going on? Oh. Okay. Hovered. I am just going to call this hovered card index. Fine. 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 237. Okay, so we really don't like that. Then 1725, we don't like what's going on there. Oh, because I didn't have a semicolon at the, okay. Alright. And we built it. Hooray. What do we got? 3 turrets. That's not good. Well, I don't want that. So we're definitely like not drawing the 3. Oh, because they have 0, not index. We'll do that. Okay. I know that feels like a lot of rigmarole to go and continue to redo the thing. But I swear, the sweet part where there's actual interactivity is coming very soon. And then that's where I'll end the stream. So, okay. If game state, because again, this is an example of you do all the work around behind the scenes. You do all the setup, right? A lot of programming is this. If you don't program much, listen. A lot of programming is you set up the thing. You do all this work behind the scenes to set up the thing that you want to do. And then when it comes time to do the thing that you want to do, you're just like, oop. You just put it there. You know, just place the block. It's kind of like that. I did all this setup, moving everything into an array, and then and figuring out like if you're hovering it, which rectangle or which index you're hovering, and then now that everything has kind of been moved into that structure, I can just figure out. I can say, okay, well, if your card is being hovered, right, as we go through this array of 3 different cards, if that index matches the card that you're hovering over, hovered card index, is equal to index, then we're just going to draw the card rectangle a little bit slightly more elevated. Can I just, no, yeah, I want to do that times. Actually, I have this logic in there somewhere. Yeah, okay, I do that. Min.y. Okay, so I can just use like, all I'm doing there is just saying like, hey, if this is the hovered card, oh, and I can also use and here, then draw it like smaller, or draw it offset a little bit, right? That's just a simple way to tell. There's a lot of things you could also do, but that's the quick and easy one. And there you go. I've got this behavior where as soon as I put the cursor on top of the card, it shows as my selected card, right? Just a quick, simple, easy way to say to the player, you want to pick this one, right? So now we've actually we've got a card select screen, and we've got this ability to then, pick a card, and then when you pick the card, that card goes into your card deck, and then now you have that gets kind of shuffled in. And so when you're doing the deck building, the patio deck building part, you'll have more cards. You'll have additional cards to choose from. So one quick way to do this is to take that screen and turn it into have it so maybe I do like a section where I battle a little bit. I like fight off the neighbors. And after I win that battle, then I'm presented with the card select screen, right? And then I pick a card, and then I go into the patio deck building phase where I get to like place stuff on my patio, and then I defend it, and then I get to pick another card. And so it's kind of you're building on this card deck as you build on your patio deck, and then the two start to synergize with each other. That's a really simple way of doing it to start. I actually think that later that it's going to be a little bit more involved. I think what I'm actually going to want is something where there's cards out there in the world, and you have to build your deck towards them. So there are card choice points out there in the world. When you build your deck towards one of those points, you get to choose cards. So that's when the option comes up. Or maybe I'm not exactly sure. I guess what I'm saying is, I know that this has to be in the game, the card choice part, but I don't exactly know where it has to be in the game, right? I don't know what will trigger it. I have some rough idea. I think, it would be cool if you had to expand your deck to get to the cards, but that might not be the better option. I don't really know when you're supposed to be presented with that choice. I just know that you're supposed to be presented with that choice at some point. So at the very least, getting the system in so that you can play with it and see what it's like is a start. And then iterating and improving upon it is kind of the next thing to do. So this ability to build the card deck is really important. This is a huge part of it. I'd say we're most of the way there in terms of just having a simple screen where you can pick a card. Next is then being able to take that card and put it into your card deck, right? And then mixing that in with the actual game loop. That comes after that. Then we're looking at kind of the sort of the next problem that I think needs to be solved in this game, which is I think it's too easy to play cards. So we're really just, I hope you can see that this process of prototyping is really just one problem after another. It's not, let's build out the whole thing. It's more like, let's solve this problem, let's solve that problem. That's how I prefer to prototype things. So at this point, I'm just going to see if anybody has any questions, and then I will end the stream if there are no questions. So if you got any thoughts about game prototyping or etc., I'll even ask questions about programming languages, because why not? I am told that I need to give time for people to ask different questions, so that's what I'm going to do. All right, have a good afternoon. I will see you next time.